I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And I'm JT Timmons.
He's like, I'm here too.
I'm here too. I totally forgot. I was pulling up our para-junkie list to thank.
Well, speaking of the para-junkie list, would you like to go ahead and do that?
Absolutely. I'm always down to thank our para-junkies. Here we go. I would love to thank Emily V, Natalie Nicole, Megan Baker, Ashley Blackman, Michelle Price, Michael Guino, and Mel Ellis. Thank y'all so much for your undying support, and we really are excited to have you as part of the para-junkie family.
Absolutely. And if you are wanting to become a para-junkie, you can find us on Patreon. We have all sorts of exclusive content going on over there. We talk about different folklore tales. We just recently dropped a para-junkie episode where we have a great time talking about the drama that is the Icelandic Christmas demon lady. So, if you like things like that, or if you want to have a really great group of people who love, just having a Discord basically of paranormal things, asking questions. They're really bonding with each other right now.
We've really amassed a lot of exclusive episodes at this point. So if you do become a para-junkie, you're going to have a influx of content to view and listen to and all that stuff. But yes, it's for most tiers, it is an episode a week, just a full one.
Yep.
But only for you.
Yes. So today we are going to be doing a Q&A. So we have a lot of really great questions this week.
Cool.
Everybody has always come in with the heat with the questions. But if you do have a question and you would like to hear us answer it on this podcast, you can utilize the TikTok Q&A button on our profile on Haunted City Podcast.
Yep. All right. One more thing for everyone who was super worried about Chris and his sunglasses.
Yes.
I have gotten, Chris, I've gotten probably 20-something messages.
Sure.
And these are DMs. We've had comments on Patreon. We've had all types of it. People are concerned because you don't usually wear those. So if you just want to go ahead and
so
he's not dying.
I suffer from post-concussive syndrome, and when I got, the flu a few weeks back, it made me very susceptible to light. And so the light that we're using was just causing like a low migraine situation. So wearing the sunglasses was, in fact, because the light was just a little glaring for me. But I'm better now. It is kind of subsided a little. So
yes, Chris is not dying.
I'm not dying.
We don't need any more ghosts.
Yes.
It's okay.
Although,
plenty to talk
if I
about.
do die, I promise I will haunt the heck out of all of this.
Yes.
I will leave a mic out. All right.
You'll just hear a phantom boogity boogity.
That's so funny. All right. Question number 1. Wells 2003 asks, how come it's always ghosts from 200 years ago, but no one from the 80s saying, hey, bro?
They are there.
There are many present ghosts, like present day ghosts. The stories that last, the ones that peak and people repeat and tell, are just the ones that fall into folklore and fall into that commonality of talking, and thereby create a presence that people recognize and understand as ghosts. And I think we've talked about this a lot on the show, where a lot of ghosts you may not even realize are ghosts. They may just look like people. And so when people are dressed in modern dress, even like in the last 30 or 40 years, if they're wearing clothes from that period, you might not immediately assume they're ghosts. But if you see someone in a Victorian garb, just moving slowly through a house, you're like, ghost. So it's mostly just about identification.
Identification.
It's true. Yeah, I think it really does go down to the point of being that pretty much it's hard for people to believe that they were actual people because it's so far in our history at this point, where we kind of do associate them with a little bit of a folkloric style because we can't imagine living in the 1800s or 1700s. And so they do kind of live in infamy, if you will.
And they stand out.
Exactly.
They stick out. Absolutely, yeah.
I will say, though, when I used to work with a certain tour company and I had to wear my Victorian dress and stuff, people used to think I was a ghost all the time. It's so funny because I would stand outside the Andrew Lowe house in my big dress and whatnot, and people would walk by and take photos, and they're like, is she alive? Is she okay? And I'm like, yes, very much so, actually.
Well, didn't we have a question about somebody who had gone around a square and saw like a soldier, a person dressed as a soldier?
Yes.
And it's like that. Of course, that sticks out to you. But if that was just a guy wearing regular clothes, then you wouldn't have thought of it. You wouldn't have thought, oh, that's probably a ghost under that tree. But it could have been. And there are many, 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 many stories about the very recently dead, people seeing them like right after death.
Absolutely.
And so, but those stories generally don't capture the imagination or turn into stories, or they become these very encapsulated moments that people share. And so if you flatten it out to all the ghost experiences that people have, there are probably a lot more modern ghost stories than you think, but we generally hear about the Victorian woman who haunts the house.
True. I would say 98% of the ghosts that I see on a regular basis are not historic ghosts. Honestly, most of them are modern ghosts, and
actually that might be an interesting point as well, because if a ghost lasts a long time, that means it has a significant power source, meaning it has enough energy to present itself, and that might also contribute to it. If you're not sensitive, and I dare say the vast majority of people are not sensitive. In order to experience a ghost, you need a ghost that has a lot of energy and a lot of power. Yeah. So the ones that have lasted 100 years, 200 years, they actually are, charged up. They have enough power to make themselves present and known to people who aren't gifted, who don't have the ability to just see the dead. So it may take time for ghosts to acquire that much energy and that much force and that much power. So, in 200 years from now, people will be like, why are we always seeing like the year 2000 ghosts? Why are the 1980s ghosts always around? And it's because by that time, maybe they have gained enough energy to present themselves to more people, more, non-gifted people.
The Alice Riley type ghosts.
Yes.
Yeah, the Alice Riley type ghosts.
Yeah.
Cool.
The most recent ghost that I saw was when we were driving through Hinesville at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, you did.
A couple nights ago, because JT and I were driving back from Tallahassee very early in the morning, and we were going through Hinesville, and I just see this guy on a bike, and then it just it disappears. And so
the bike disappears, or both?
Oh, both. Yeah.
Oh, they're just gone.
Yeah, they just.
So it's a bike ghost also.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I guess so. It is a bike ghost.
Were you
like
on
the ghost bucket? Remember
84, the highway that goes right through Hinesville?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a death highway. Like people get hit, and when I was in school, at least, because I went to school in Hinesville, Georgia, which is
really
very painful for me.
Oh, no,
because it was Hinesville. It was called Hinesville. I grew up in Germany and Italy, and then I graduated high school in Hinesville, Georgia.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No disrespect to the people of Hinesville.
I know, right? We have some Hinesville listeners.
Well, that's what I was saying. Hinesville is kind of this very eclectic and interesting place because it's also a military base, Fort Stewart, and there's a lot going on, although it is Hinesville. I mean, yes. I think even the people from Hinesville will admit it's Hinesville.
But they got a bomb Chick-fil-A, y'all. It is a bomb Chick-fil-A.
Well, and actually a lot of the food places, Isola's is incredible. There's a lot of great places in Hinesville. It's where Baldino's started. Yeah. So yeah.
What?
Yeah, Baldino's Jersey subs.
No
it was a sergeant in the Army who was like, I miss my sandwiches.
Is the original one still there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
No way. That's crazy.
There you go.
In any case, back to the point that when I was in high school, I would say at least a dozen people died on that stretch of road.
Really?
Because truckers just
they
fly through there,
Yeah.
and it was like this unkempt area of just speeding.
Yes.
People just barrel through, and lots of accidents. There was a terrible one where like a truck pinned a car with a family in it. It was terrible. But I do recall that highway was very dangerous, and so they I think they took a lot of effort to kind of curb it by putting lots of lights and lots of things. But there was one particular weird intersection that was always problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, there's a ghost bike apparently in
I
Hinesville.
would not doubt that someone on a bike got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
Just a side note. I think I came up with our next Pear Junkie exclusive. Why don't we do the Ludowici tomato garden murder?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I just thought about that. That's like one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite
True
crime stories.
Yeah.
But also, it's got to be haunted.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
just the way,
Yeah.
We
the
drove
way-
by it that one time,
Yeah.
and we were like, ugh.
That was just a thought after talking about Hinesville, because you just like Hinesville,
Yeah.
Ludowici.
Ludowici.
Yeah,
Yes.
right outside of Hinesville. All right, so let's go on to the next question. Before we do, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe and share our videos, because we're really trying to grow the YouTube following. It's growing pretty steadily, but we want to really put it in a supercharge. So just a reminder. All right, here we go. Sarah Ford 1219 asks, can y'all tell me if the Owens Thomas House in slave quarters is haunted?
Absolutely, it is.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
any of those historic homes that would have slaves and things like that, they're gonna have at minimum residual hauntings, because it's just like when you're in slavery in general, that's a very traumatic experience, and a lot of times residual hauntings come from traumatic experiences or just like something that deeply affects you emotionally, and it leaves that impression of energy. So there's definitely some hauntings in that way. Not a ton of like intelligent energy there. It's just
I don't think so. Yeah, it seems to be just stained with certain sorrows, certain events. There are a lot of people who will claim that Lafayette at that balcony, you can still hear a Frenchman like speaking, or going through that, and that's kind of typical for people when there's a significant singular historic event to think that event really and that would be where the entire city came to that street, came to that balcony, came to listen to this Revolutionary War hero. So there's a lot of people who just want to cling on to the moment and tell that story over and over again, that I can still hear Lafayette speaking in French or speaking with his French accent. But really, when you take into the slaves' account that for a long time in Savannah, we had a fairly shameful practice of toning down the whole conversation about slaves, and that there was a time when even the Owens Thomas House used the term servants' quarters instead of slaves' quarters, and definitely played down, and of late, of the last 20 years, they really leaned into teaching the history, giving you names, giving you all these things, which I think is amazing and wonderful historically, but it also probably stirs things up. Absolutely.
Yeah, the Telfair Academy and whatnot, they've done a really good job of staying very historically accurate in that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some more intelligent spirits that are like, oh, I'm getting talked about now.
Right, stirring its consciousness about the fact that people are now thinking about it, talking about it, and acknowledging it. Yeah.
I haven't been in the Owens Thomas House in years, so I can't tell you exactly how it feels in there right now, just because that was never one of the museums that I personally had to go into for work or things like that. I think the last time I went there was like probably 10 years ago when I visited Savannah before I lived here with my family. But I do remember going in there, and you just feel this very deep sorrow. It just feels sad. And you feel that a lot, especially when you go into any slave quarters in Savannah.
Absolutely.
I mean, even at the Sorrel Weed House, when you go into their slave quarters, you just imagine how cramped it was. There's usually no ventilation. It's usually gets up to like 120 degrees in those places in the middle of summer, and you are, just trapped like sardines inside a little place. So, I feel like that's what I picked up on the most.
And always worth examining and talking about is that when a house is presented in its era, when you're using the furnishings and the artwork and really capturing a time when people lived and thrived in a house or suffered, that is a great way to encourage spirits to inhabit a place. When you make it like it was when they were alive, when you kind of keep the patterns, when everything looks the way it used to look, and you've restored it to its former glory, that is the kind of thing that the patterns of energies in a house can suddenly be more interactive and reactive to the environment. In fact, when we go ghost hunting, sometimes we'll try to bring an era cue, something that comes from that era, like an object. If you know a spirit from the late 1800s is there, you can bring some kind of object from the late 1800s in hopes that there will be a connective vein for the spirit to actually communicate.
And I think that's why a lot of these historic homes especially have such strong energy.
Yes.
Is like because a lot of times they keep the family's collections and put it up, or if they don't have access to the family's collections, like even the Sorrel Weed House, which I don't think has anything in there that was actually owned by the Sorrel family, because the previous owner, I believe they said, took a lot of that stuff. So, but it's all period accurate.
Yeah.
And so they have some of the strongest spirits, that are interacting with guests and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense why those houses stay active, even if we don't necessarily talk about specific spirits, even the same way with the Angelo house.
For sure. All right, moving on. Next question. Rebecca N463 asks, what bed and breakfast would you say is the most haunted?
That's hard.
I would say the one that embraces it the most would be the 1790.
That's what I was thinking.
Like, I would definitely say that 100. Place at the very base, they lean into it and they appreciate the legends and the stories that circulate about it, and that gives you opportunity to be in a very, it is a haunted building, but it's one that is very embraced as far as hauntings go. Actively, I think the Forsyth Park Inn is an amazingly haunted place that doesn't get a lot of press, and they're not selling a haunted inn.
No.
But I'd say that for experiences, the Forsyth Park Inn has, I've heard more steady conversation from guests, and mostly these are people who did not know there was a ghost or didn't come looking for a ghost. In 1790, you are looking for a ghost, and you do get great stories from the 1790. Even Miley Cyrus has a ghost story from the 1790.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Really?
Yeah. She filmed The Last Song in Savannah, and she stayed in 204, which is the haunted room, give or take.
Yeah.
But it is the celebrated haunted room, and her story was interesting because she was getting ready to go, and in the 1790 204, one of the stories that often comes up is that women are kind of abused in that room. There's a lot of weird things, but their jewelry goes missing, things get tossed around, and women tend to get like kind of harassed, hair pulled, and things of that nature, while men tend to get like caresses on their face, or so most people are thinking that it's a kind of a jealous woman ghost in the room. But Miley Cyrus's story was that she was getting ready, and when she was in the bathroom, and she came out of the bathroom and came into her room, her stuff was out of her luggage, and there was a wet handprint on one of her boots. And I was like, ooh. Now,
Stalker.
that also could have been a stalker. Yeah, exactly. I was like, that could have been a stalker. But it seemed to happen in an inordinate amount of time, like into the bathroom and then out of the bathroom, and everything had changed. And
that's weird.
A peculiar story.
That is odd.
Miss Jody.
Yes.
Did she tell you the full story?
She didn't tell me the full story, but
the full story was basically she stayed in the hotel, not in 204.
she stayed down the hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And she woke up and she saw a man sitting in the corner of her room.
So creepy.
And she was terrified, but the reason that she didn't like scream or wake up her husband or anything is that she knew that it wasn't a man. Like it wasn't like an actual full-blown man. And she was like, this is why we're staying in this hotel, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. And but we are actually trying to gain access to the 1790 to tell its many fun stories for our third episode of our series that we only release on Patreon to Pair Junkies. And actually, just real fast, this coming Monday, our second episode, the Grave Face one, does drop. So. Awesome. Just wanted to plug that super fast as we're talking about 1790, because that's I'm hoping that's gonna be our third episode, and Forsyth Park Inn, I'm hoping that's gonna be there too. But anyway, yes, back to Miss Jody's story.
But yeah, she did tell me about the man sitting in the corner. I didn't hear like
Family friend, by the way, if you don't know who Miss
she's
Jody
a family friend. And we just saw her over the weekend. And so she was like, oh, yeah, I have to tell you about my ghost story, because that happens to me a lot. It's a very common occurrence where people...
But you love to hear them.
I do. Well, I love it. But it's, people just come up to me and are like, I have to tell you my ghost story. And they like never talk to me. And it's always that. That's the, that's usually the conversation I have with most people. But anyways, so yeah, she tells me that, and she said that she goes down to the front desk in the morning, and when they're checking out, the lady who had been working there forever, I guess, she was like, oh, I got to tell you about this ghost that people see in your room. And she described exactly the man that Jody saw in the corner. And she's like, so I'm not crazy,
Was she on the second floor?
Yes.
And she was in the U?
Yeah.
Do you know where?
Gosh, did she tell you what room?
She probably has it in a receipt, so
Yeah.
I'll ask her. We'll figure it out, and then when we do the series, maybe we'll pop on in.
Yeah, right. So
years and years ago, we did a ghost hunt in the 1790, and we had a sensitive with us who was very drawn to a corner in that hallway, and drawn to a very specific piece of furnishing, which I don't even know if it's still there, but it was basically a mirror that was also like a weird little table. So it was like but not a vanity. It was like a coat rack, and like being around it definitely caused like this kind of like, oh, this is weird, and it would be weird if against the wall, because there was a room on the other side. I was like, whoever is staying in the room here might be getting a lot of activity, a lot of strangeness going on, because this mirror, it turns out, was a reception area for the funeral home.
Oh, wow.
When the Keogh House was a funeral home.
yeah,
No way.
So it was moved from the Keogh House when it was a funeral home to this, and it's an innocuous piece, but it's strange enough to even just look at it and be like, that doesn't really belong in a hallway. It doesn't really belong there, which is enough to make you be like, what is it? And it's like, it's I guess a catch-all, like when you walk in a door and there's something right there to put your wallet and keys and maybe hang something on, and with a long mirror so that on the way out you can look at it. And and make sure you're all okay. But it was a very strange thing, and I'm curious.
I'll find out the room number.
Absolutely.
All right. Do you have anything else, Boom?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just adding on to the Forsyth Park, and that would be the one that I would agree is like the bed and breakfast that doesn't get enough hype.
Most underrated haunting.
Yes, I would definitely say that because I've stayed in there multiple times and just odd little bits and bobs of paranormal activity. Especially down in the dog room. It's not like a room for dogs, but it's like just covered in this very odd dog wallpaper.
Oh, yeah.
And so that one was the one that I would say I had the most activity with, just because it sounded like constantly in the middle of the night, a hustle and bustle of a kitchen almost.
Well, and it's interesting because it's worth examining the fact that the Forsyth Park Inn's ghosts are not scary. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why it doesn't get the hype up, because they do not actually bother anyone. In fact, they're mostly helpful. In a lot of the stories I hear, people are like, and then my things were folded, or it's like a house cleaning goes. What? Why? So because it's not scary, it generally people don't repeat it. People don't tell stories about ghosts that aren't because that's the framework of most ghost stories, is how creepifying it is.
Yeah. And
if you have a warm-spirited, good-spirited, which again, I always say, of the ghost stories that I've collected in my life from people, 90% of them are good. 90% of them are positive stories, and usually involving family members, or usually involving a lot of love. Those stories don't get told. People don't want to share those stories, because when you're like, ooh, ghost story, you're like, ooh, start the campfire, let's tell a ghost story. They're not. And then I felt a warm hug, and you're like, oh,
so true.
It is.
I think we are conditioned for the scary.
Yeah,
and so you get more of the scary stories because people repeat the scary stories and very rarely repeat the really kind and wonderful.
Because they're boring. I'm sorry.
It's not true.
Madison, we did an episode. We did a From One to Wicked, and Madison was like telling, like it was on like Polly's Island. It was during the hurricane.
Oh yeah.
And she told this story, and I got scalded in the comments for like, let her tell the story, idiot. And I'm like, I should have. However, I will say it was like this ghost up in a lighthouse that like hugs you at the top of the steps. Right? Wasn't that it at the top of the lighthouse?
It's the kids.
No. It was a woman. It was a female ghost.
Oh, that one.
It was a woman ghost, and she like gives you a hug and people feel warmth and all of that.
That's the Florida Keys one.
And I in the comments they were like, bro, because I was like, just move on. I was like, come on.
Well, and that's just it. There comes a point in your life when you start to appreciate that what is generally considered mundane is where we live. And if you can't honor and be excited about it, your life is going to be very, very disappointing.
For sure.
Because there's wonderfully beautiful stories to tell. And you kind of learn that from essayists. If you read really good essayists, they'll tell stories about just getting up in the morning and going about their daily routine. But if they're doing it right, they're telling you that life is very interesting every moment. You don't have to wait for the boogity. Yeah. You can, appreciate the,
See, but JT's been like this his entire life.
Oh, yeah, no. It's all demons. It's got to be a demon.
Yeah.
Like when JT was a kid, apparently his dad told me that he would tell JT stories, and it would start out so sweet, and he'd be like, and the reindeer are on the roof, and JT would be like, do they have fangs, and are they bleeding from their eyes? And he's like, yes, actually. How did you know? and so it hasn't
human
stopped.
Reindeer, why do you think they fly?
Yeah.
My whole family definitely fed my love of horror. I mean, like just a healthy helping every day. Like 7-year-old me, have you seen The Exorcist yet? I'm like, no. Anyway, all right, so let's go ahead and move on. Chris, you're going to like this question. Some questions come up that I read beforehand, and then I'm like, oh, Chris is going to like this one. Do spirits always have to look human when they show up, or can they look like something else?
Oh, they can look like whatever they feel is the best to connect. We talk about this a lot with birds. Intriguingly enough, side note, for the last month, a bird has been coming to my house, beating furiously on the window, and then sitting on the branch right opposite it. And at first we thought it was seeing its reflection in the glass and maybe it thinks it's another bird or something, but it is very almost you could set your watch to it every day, and it just sits there, and it allows us to come right up to the window.
Wow.
On the other side of it, and it's like, what are you trying to tell us? Who are you? I don't understand. Please explain yourself, bird. But back to the question at hand. Yes, in fact, there are stories where ghosts will take on frightful countenances, frightful looks to achieve the desired effect. We talk about ghosts wanting attention because human attention and human connection is a form of energy that really helps a ghost establish and root in our world. And so sometimes they will take on forms that are, in fact, more monstrous or more exaggerated, in hopes of getting you to pay attention, in hopes that you'll feed it the fear and the attention that you need. But in a lot of ways, some ghosts are in fact trapped in forms that are not their own. There's a lot of question as to how or why a spirit might be presenting as something other than itself. Of course, we don't know. We don't have a firm answer. But there are times when spirits, because again, fully grown adults who die sometimes appear as children. Sometimes you'll see the child version of them, which I think we've even talked about before. Some people have actually been haunted by themselves. They'll see like a young version of themselves in a place that they used to live or something like that. They'll catch a glimpse of it, which is a kind of residual haunting, I think. But again, whenever you start talking about the appearance of ghosts, sometimes it is about the perception of the person. Mm-hmm. Some people die thinking that they're monsters, and then they come back looking monstrous. Some people die thinking that they're small, so they come back small. Some people have these perceptions, and our internal perceptions of ourselves can sometimes very much become the thing that we present, because it's all we have. All we have is this version of ourselves. And that's more intelligent haunting than anything, because that's a spirit that is constructing its look based on how it feels, based on how it operates in a location or an idea. So that's a really good question, and we could probably spend a long time talking about.
It's true.
The fact that our perception, the living's perception, is highly predicated on a consensus of everybody else. Everybody else kind of decides what things look like, and we all kind of agree to it, and that becomes the reality that we exist in. And if anything is out of that norm, it takes such a cooperation between spirit and person seeing the spirit to establish that connection. And that's why there are many, many people who would love to see a ghost but never do, and they kind of get into that protocol of suggesting that ghosts don't exist because they don't experience it, or they don't feel it, or they don't do these things. And it's like, well, it's possible that your perception is too concrete for the spirit to manipulate it. There's a relationship between spirits and the living in order to achieve contact. And even if you are a believer and you have all these things, your perception might be too concrete. You might have established such a stronghold, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not a deficit by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it probably helps. But it does make you almost impervious to haunting, because the perception that you hold, which is upheld by everything in your life, whether it's upheld by the people who raised you and the communities you've lived in and everything. So that's building a very solid world where nothing can sneak in, nothing can get through the cracks. And that's why you hear a lot of times people who have terrible accidents or terrible trauma, what's happened is there's been a crack in their perception. Something happened that shook them so deeply that now these other entities can communicate or can show themselves. And I've known many people who were, non-believers, staunch non-believers, and then got into like a car wreck or had a near-death experience. And when they came back, they were like, I'm seeing things, I'm feeling things, I'm sensing things. And it's like, well, that's because the perception that you had your whole life that was very solid was shook.
Yep.
I will say though, a lot of people believe that you have to see a spirit as human or things like that. But I have some photos. I have one in particular I pulled up because I don't think I've ever shown you this one, Chris. But this was taken in the Andrew Lowe house. And it is the most wild photo I've ever seen.
Oh my God.
And so basically, we'll insert the photo here, but a guest took this on Halloween on my tour. And basically, he took a photo of the window because he just liked the window in the Andrew Lowe house right at the first platform of the steps. And so he takes this photo, and what we saw, because I saw it happen too, but I didn't see it in this full form until I looked at this photo. But there was this weird mist outside of that window, and I thought it was fog because, it's October in Savannah. Fog's not abnormal, and it's but it started transforming and it started forming something, but I didn't catch what it was actually forming until the photo. And it looks like something that I can only describe as straight out of Spirit Halloween.
Absolutely. It looks like a Halloween decoration.
It is so bizarre. But, what was weird about it is that...
Oh, I've seen it a million times. I know.
What's weird about it is that...
You love that photo.
Well, yeah, because I can't figure out what it is. I'm like... It doesn't feel demonic necessarily. It just feels like this weird in-between type entity.
Sure.
Just
like Spirit Halloween.
Spirit Halloween.
Yes, indeed. And that's just it. Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Exactly.
Because it is also worth mentioning that had you not been there to see that picture, and I'm sure all of you who are looking at it online, you would immediately have a dozen answers to what it is. Which is, again, one of the hardest things about this particular field is there's a million ways to fake a ghost. Mm-hmm. And there are a million people who do it. So whenever you come across a piece of evidence, it becomes like a wrestling match in your brain. You're like, I know how I would do this. I know how it could be done. But that very line of logic is not in the same camp as what it is. Those are two different things. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that's how it was done.
Sure.
And you'll find that debunkers are always using that as their debunking tool is, well, I would just do X, Y, and Z. But you're still not addressing the fact that you weren't the one.
Yes,
it wasn't you.
Well, and it's true. Even if I wasn't there, there's no time on that tour in particular where you could sit there and sit in Photoshop on your phone and just draw this out.
No.
But, it's because it's very nuanced. Even if somebody somehow would, it would take someone a couple hours, not the 15 minutes that you had in the house to show me at the end of being in the house,
Good luck convincing TikTok.
Yeah.
No.
Well, whatever.
It's so fake.
But they don't listen to the podcast, and they're only seeing the 15 seconds of me talking about it. And they're like, "Oh, she's so dumb," and I'm like, "Okay, whatever." It's fine. It's a cool photo nonetheless. But
it is a cool photo.
But it was Halloween, so the veil's at its thinnest. I think that was on my last tour, which was the 11 o'clock tour. So it was very late.
Yeah.
Not a ton of people with me on that one because usually the last tour of the night is in a huge group.
We've captured a lot of ghost photos around 11 in Savannah.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the closer you get to, the witching hour and whatnot, the more active they're starting to get.
That's 3 a.m.?
Yes. But also
it's not close to 3 a.m. though.
The closer I said,
So you're saying 3 a.m. they just ramp it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the conceit of it all, even if you went past all of it, is the idea that the less human activity is around, the more spiritual activity ramps up. Okay. So the reason why 3 a.m. makes the most sense is because most people are asleep. Most people are have powered down and aren't sucking up all the psychic energy. So spirits have that ability. But you take into account things like where you were, what size group you were with, the opportunistic nature of it, and of course, Halloween's Halloween for a reason. I mean, the reason why we observe that is because for, eons, people recognized that there was a point in the year at which the changing of the season and the sense of impending doom led to this thinning of the veil.
Yeah.
And we had ritualized the moment that we believe it's the thinnest, the moment where the seasons of life become the seasons of death.
Sure.
Quite simply, there used to be just two seasons, a season of life and a season of death. And that was the moment that it went from one to the other. And we rarely talk about the other part of that, which is kind of the Easterish era, where the season of death is now turning into the season of life. We don't talk about the fact that the veil is thin then too. Mm-hmm. It is almost equally thin, but we're approaching it with hope.
Yes. It's true. Yeah, we're not carving turnips for no reason, people.
All right, moving on. So, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned the person who asked that question. Man with the Hat 32. I thought that was...
Oh, no, yeah. Hat Man.
Hat Man.
Not the Hat Man.
Oh, yeah. All right. Jake the Snake. Wow, these names.
Not the wrestler. Jake
the Snake 2897 asks, is there a place in Savannah where you wouldn't go due to the fear of ghosts? I feel like we've gotten this type of question before.
We've got a more broad version of this question before, where they're like, is there a place in general that you wouldn't want to go? In Savannah, no.
Due to fear of ghosts?
I'm not afraid of the Savannah ghosts.
So I, for a long time, and I still have reservations about it, 12 West Oglethorpe was a place that I refused to go into. I had a fairly traumatic experience there. And one of the weird things is I went, because now it's a restaurant called Husk. And this was after decades of being empty and people trying to move in, but they just couldn't, and they couldn't make it work. And there was all kinds of issues with trying to get it up on its feet. And the Husk opened, and the people who knew me were like, 12 West Oglethorpe's open, are you going to go in? I was like, come on, 12 West Oglethorpe. So I actually went with a group of friends, and it was, so strange. While I was, we went upstairs, and I'd never been upstairs. I'd only been downstairs, which was bad enough. But we went upstairs, and we're up in a big table because there's like 10 of us. And I'm sitting at this table, and the first thing that I'm noticing is that I'm getting dizzy and disoriented and not having a good time. And then a waiter falls on me, just like falls over, like on me.
What?
And I was like, oh gosh. And he was like, I'm sorry. Can I get your drink orders? And he leaves. The woman who brought the drinks falls on me.
What?
And she's like, oh gosh, I just can't seem to, get my bearings. There's something, going on. I think the floors are uneven and stuff like that. Another one of my friends has a waiter fall on them. All at this table, all within about
falling.
Yeah, people were just falling. But that was the sensation I was having sitting down. Just sitting there, I was feeling this kind of, I was like, is there a gas leak?
Right.
Are you all about to die?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is happening? And so we stopped the waiter and we just like asked, so, and it turns out that the wait staff that night or during the opening were all from out of town. So they all came in, to make the big opening.
Come in drunk?
Well, that's just it. It's like, do you know what's going on? They're like, no, it's so weird. And he was saying that he had dropped like 2 dishes, and he's like, he's a professional waiter. Like he does high-end wait staff stuff, and he doesn't drop dishes. And he's like, I've never dropped a dish in my life until I came here, and I dropped 2 right off the bat. And I was just like, that's so strange.
I wonder if
and so one of my friends is like, he should tell you the ghost story. And it was just like, there's a ghost? It's like, what do you mean there's a ghost?
We should, you know what? I'll reach out to the GM and see if we can't get them on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to talk to them about that.
And I'm sure that they would talk about it because it's a fun, like, history to it because there's a lot of like
sad too.
Yeah, well, it's just bizarre. It goes on to be because the core story is one of woeful loss, but the continued story is about murder, mayhem, and horror.
Yeah.
So it's like,
do you know if they kind of like own how haunted that house is.
They do not.
They do not.
No, because
It's a high-end restaurant, so
it is.
So then it might be hard to get the GM.
it would be very difficult for them to want that kind of attention in a lot of ways, because they can't avoid it.
Yeah.
I guarantee you a lot of the people who go there are going there because it's 12 West Oglethorpe.
Yeah.
Well,
But
they're a chain too, so
this
technically
is the second.
it's
the first one's in Charleston.
Yeah, it's low country though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm
it is
talking
low
about the
country.
GM, not
Yeah.
the owner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the G-
I mean, if the
No,
owner
I
wants to
know.
come on, then sure.
Yeah. But with oh gosh, what was I going to say to you, Chris? The I don't know. I'll think about it.
So I was going to mention that a place that I would like to not go, I probably would go into it, but it's probably the place that I am most not afraid of, but obtuse to, is St. Julian Street
I'd
Demon
stay
House.
in a heartbeat.
So the reason why though is because if y'all don't know about the Savannah Underground, I directed like a part of the Savannah Underground. Well, I directed the whole of Savannah Underground, but like there's a part of the Savannah Underground at the end that is basically the exorcism of the St. Julian Street Demon House, and I feel like if I personally go in there, it might be kind of special to that demon because I've been playing its story. Sure. I've been telling its story for now a year and a half. Same with you, because you've played Mary in there, and so I wonder.
2 years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to what we put into that story. Obviously, we took our liberties for entertainment, reasons, but with the voicemail that happens beforehand and all of that, that voicemail was based on actual things that happened to Jim Williams, and all of that, and so I don't know. I feel like if we go in, you or I feel like or Kiwan, because he's the CEO of it, I feel like it's like, hey, thanks for telling my story.
No,
And it's like, come here.
So it's funny, actually, that you say that because, like I said, I stand by, I'm not afraid of Savannah's ghosts. I will go into any haunted place if they allow me. But it's funny that you mentioned the St. Julian Street house because every time that I go by that house now, I see it or I feel that entity standing there looking out, because I talk about it multiple times a week, every week for like
in front of it.
Yeah. And it knows me now. So it's
worth talking about is the fact that the family that resides there have had zero experiences. Like none. They are very adamant about how very not.
That's what it wants. That's what it wants.
Significant it is. Mm-hmm. It is it's a marked house.
Yes.
It is definitely a strange and peculiar house, and it even, in a lot of ways, even in its shape, is reminiscent of the Amityville house.
That's what I always say when I point it out to my guests. I'm like, it looks just like the Amityville horror house because it's a Rhode Island style home, so that's why. But
yeah. I think just off of what you just said, either they're not mentioning it because it is a private residence, and they probably don't want people just like standing out front,
of course.
Looking at it. You try to be as respectful as possible. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the tour buses go by, the trolleys, not tour buses. The trolleys go by, but they can't even use a microphone. They have to turn their microphone off and talk.
Because it's residential.
Yeah, they have to say it with their chest right there, but then they can turn their microphones back on when they're done with Washington Square.
Yeah, I don't use a microphone anyway.
No,
so
she says it with her chest.
Yeah, always. But no, for real though, like I've seen it multiple times. Every time I go past the house, after about a year of us doing that tour, it picked up on.
It's there.
Yeah, no, it's there because I've seen it and I've felt it and I know it's there. And so, maybe it's just the people who live in the house. It just doesn't care for them, or they're just not talking about their.
It's using them. It's not showing itself because it wants people to think that it's not there.
Yeah.
So it can do something bigger later.
I don't know if it's going to do anything.
It's plotting.
I don't know.
It's a demon. It's plotting.
But
that's what they do.
But regardless, it is an interesting story. But I would be interested to see if I did go into the house one day, because there is rumors that people have said of them possibly making it into an Airbnb.
They've talked about it.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's one of those fascinating collisions of highly populist storytelling and very down to earth people, because they're not against it. They're not, in interviews, they've definitely been like, that's the story. That's the story of the place. But, they raise their kids. They, if there was opportunity, you would think that it would have been taken. But to the point of plotting and planning, demons don't actually have unlimited access to this plane. You kind of have to renew in a way. You get a 7-year lease for those people who don't know. You have 7 years to do your calamity. And if you don't associate yourself, possess something, or have some anchor, you go back to hell. That's just the way it goes. And that's where the bizarre notion of 7 years bad luck when you break a mirror, that's where a lot of the 7 calamity comes from. Because if you are not of demons and angels mentality, anything that can serve you through ritual or through purpose becomes a pretty good thing. Sure. If you're like, bring us a harvest, and the demon's like, well, I can do that.
Yeah,
I can bring you a harvest. You're going to give me a soul? All right, I'll bring you a harvest. It becomes entangled in so many different ideologies, because it's like, well, no, that was a good thing that happened. Yeah, that's a bad thing that happened, because if anything, the fact that 7 follows out in so many ways, the seventh son of a seventh son, 7 days of the week, the whole concept of 7 being this thing. So it's very possible that the demon doesn't want to be rousted. Sure, because it has a place that will keep it, and if it did act out, someone might come and push on it. Exactly. Someone might come and, it's already seen an exorcism. Yep. And so it's like, and I've been a part of 5 exorcisms in my life. And in each case, the immediate effect was very night and day. Mm-hmm. But over time, the trouble came back. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you tell a demon, get out in the name of the Lord. And the demon's like, yes, but it doesn't know what to do. It doesn't have an immediate, it's like, sure, I'll just be in the corner, and maybe I won't be smited. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, it's like, haven't been smited. Maybe if I just poke. Yep.
Anything happen?
Poke.
Exactly.
And you get this idea that there are probably rituals that work far greater, or probably aspects that we don't completely understand. So yes, I think that that the demon is probably, he has his power source and he doesn't want to ruin it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All righty. Last question, and y'all, it's a good one. Carla Preston 12 asks, what is your number 1 place that you want to investigate soon? We can go around the table. I know for a fact, like we said earlier, 1790 Inn is probably my go-to right now, because I've heard so many good stories about it, and it seems like it's very there's a lot of ghosts in it, and there's a lot of opportunity for that. But Madison, what are you thinking?
So I don't know if she's referring to, Savannah, where we want to investigate, or
I would say just anywhere in the continental U.S.
I want to investigate the Conjuring House very badly. I would love to go in there and actually experience it, because, because of all the legends that have occurred.
Oh, absolutely.
Inside that home, I would love to investigate that place. Savannah, I would like to probably, that's a hard one. I probably would want to investigate the Candler Hospital. If I know that will not happen anytime soon, because, it's
a SCAD building.
It's a SCAD building now. Although I am a SCAD alumni, that has not worked in my favor with them in the past. But it's maybe they'll be like, sure, one day. I would really like to investigate
what we
it, though.
Could do, and just as a simple plan and plot, is claim that you're making a movie. gain access through, a license to film inside of a building, and then just turn it into an investigation.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, if our Patreon gets big enough, everybody has a price. So
That is true.
Although SCAD's price might be more than we want to pay.
Yes.
But Conjuring House, when we did Lizzie Borden, we actually stayed the night at Lizzie Borden, and there were people staying the night too who spent the previous night in the Conjuring House, and I had not realized that it was also a kind of a Airbnb bed and breakfast situation. I didn't realize you could stay overnight in the Conjuring House until that moment. I was like, oh no. And my wife, who enjoys this stuff but does not pursue it by any stretch of imagination, has been like, let's just go ahead and plan that. Let's just go ahead and plan it. We'll pay the price for 8 people, because you have to pay for 8 people no matter what. And it's really reasonable too.
Yeah.
But she's like, we'll pay for all 8 and we'll just stay.
Exactly.
We'll just stay there.
Yeah. That just sounds so much fun. I mean, I just want to see what happens. I want to see for myself what's in there, just because I'm very curious. But you never know. That would definitely be my number one, though, at the moment. So awesome. Well, thank you guys for asking so many great questions this time. You always do. I don't know why I'm surprised, but... if you do, like I said at the beginning, if you have a question that you want answered on the podcast, definitely utilize the Q&A button. Also, while you're over there, make sure to follow us and on Haunted City Podcast. That's our TikTok handle. And then for Instagram, our handle is The Most Haunted City on Earth. You can find us on Patreon under the Savannah Underground. That's pretty much all the things that you can go to. Also, we have merch on our website, hauntedcitypodcast.com. So with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.